micro and macro climate to really get the best out of him. So I think it'd be a mistake. Well, none of us would make a judgment on the player based on 22 minutes in the Lily White shirt, but I think we've got to be patient with him, and we've got to see him in that same development phase as the likes of Sessegnon and Skip.
My instant reaction to Kulusevski at the stadium was when I looked at the front of the programme and thought, crikey, there is actually a Gary Doherty lookalike that's come from Sweden. That was stunning to me to see a player that looked like Gary Doherty in a Spurs shirt. No one's joining me on that one. Okay. Well, secondly, I think you pretty much said what I was going to say there, Gareth. What I will add is he looks like a glider as opposed to a sprinter. I think we're all going to have to get used to that. He's going to glide around and past people. And I do think that the couple of misplaced passes he made there, which were quite key ones, I felt, but that was purely down to nerves. And it should be remembered that he did actually roll the ball beautifully across the box, and any other day would have hit the target, except for Stevie Bergwijn. You know, he sort of hit some poor fellow halfway up the Park Lane there, which was a little unfortunate. Otherwise, the lad would have probably ended the night with an assist. You know, I think he looks both mercurial and enigmatic. And I'm looking forward to seeing which of those elements comes to light. But he's certainly going to be very useful for Conte. I think that's the one thing that we'll get into that second signing. Well, these are players that Conte obviously trusts more than the players that went out. And so on that basis alone, he is going to be a fine addition to the squad for the rest of the season. And Simon, the last word on Kulusevski.
Gareth, I think you made some really good points about explosiveness and how you use your body. Two things. I think at the end of the games, remember, he's so mature, and he's played the Euros, and he was on the bench for a World Cup. And he's been in this really tactical, Atlanta setup, and he was 16, 15 years old. When it's 20 minutes left in the game and you lead, he's not just going to burst down and lose his head. He's not Lucas in that way. He's really smart, he's really intelligent, he's really hard-working and disciplined. And the other part is, he might not have, that burst that we saw from Bergwijn when he passed the defender on like 1 or 2 meters. Yes, on Swedish, I say meters. But what you will see is how he uses his body. He actually talked extensively about this in an interview he did early on in his career about the difference between the Swedish youth system and Atlanta. And what he kind of talked about is how quick the pace of the game was and how he learned how to use his body. And he's actually smart in the way he does it. He does it kind of like Kane. He's really good at putting his body between himself and the ball. And because he's so big and kind of awkward looking, when he dribbles, because he's kind of a good dribbler, he's good at tricking a defender by, shifting his body and disguising what he's gonna do. When people actually think he's, like I saw out of the goals, they talk about him always cutting in on his left. He's good at tricking you, thinking that's always what he's gonna do. So that helps him at beating people out wide.
I think I saw a comment from him this week saying exactly that. He likes to make people think that he's always going to do one thing and he'll do the other, and then play the ball with his right. So I think he's aware of that, and I think it might take a little while for us to see it, but it's there. It's in his locker.
In his locker it is, and also in our locker is another great signing, Rodrigo Bentancur. Guys, I want to get into this. I thought it was an impressive debut. Such an assured and calm and smooth-looking player on the ball. Milo, pick up on the point of Rodrigo Bentancur's debut for us Saturday night, and tell us what you thought.
Yeah, I would say, just a bit of background on him. I think he's a really interesting sort of signing in that we've got 4 central midfielders now who can all play the 6 or 8 role. So I think in terms of options there, that's quite good, and I think we could play a combination of any 2 or potentially any 3, and it would work. So we've got that flexibility there. He's got a decent range of passing. He's not a creative midfielder. He's again banging the drum for, but I don't think there's a place for that necessarily within Conte's system. He's very, very composed on the ball, particularly under pressure, which is something I thought we really saw yesterday. It was a joy to see him receive the ball in tight spaces with people closing him down, but he's got that 1 or 2 touches and a nice pass out of trouble. I think everyone trusted him immediately yesterday, didn't they? And similarly with running, I think you're not going to see him dribble the length of the pitch, but again, he's got a nice, he can dribble out of pressure, dribble out of trouble. So I think, again, yesterday we saw that he's a smart player. He's strong, physically, I think he's 6'3", really good technique. I don't think we have to wait too long for him to be a regular starter. I think my suspicion is that it's going to be Skip that loses out. It's going to be Højbjerg and Bentancur as our first choice midfield pairing. Yeah, really impressed.
That, folks, is as close as you're going to get to a definitive prediction from Milo, who famously shies away from predicting or being edged on anything. You have it there. It's stamped. He's telling you, Bentancur and Højbjerg are going to be our starting midfield. And I, for one, look forward to seeing if that unfolds, if only because it is the first time I've heard him commit to a prediction. Gareth, Simon, your thoughts on this impressive debut?
Yeah, very, very assured performance. We needed something to come in and just shore things up. It sounds a little bit trite to say, but it's exactly what we needed at that point. This is clearly a very, very accomplished player who's played at the very highest level in Italy. He's only 24, but I think going into a game against most teams in the Premier League isn't going to faze him. I just think he's a really good option for us to have. We'll have to see how well he adapts to the Premier League. I would say I'd be fairly confident of him. From what I've heard of him from people who've watched him over a number of years, they say he's going to be a bit of a steady Eddie. He's going to be your 7 out of 10 every week. Possibly you might hit a few 8s, possibly even the odd 9 here or there, but you know what you're going to get with him. And I think he's a good addition to the squad, because I think he's exactly the sort of player that fits into Conte's system. I think it's another example of putting a good square peg into a good square hole.
So just picking up briefly on that, his experience at Juve, you've got to bear in mind, before he went to Italy, he was at Boca Juniors and he appeared in, Copa Libertadores finals. He's got a wealth. He's 24 years old. He's got a wealth of experience in some really, really tough environments at top clubs.
Having been to the Bombonera, and I'm not sure if any of you ever, I've been to the Bombonera, and that is, you've got to have something to play for that side, because that is live or die territory with Boca Juniors. And
As a teenager.
Yeah, you had that moment where he did, and we were talking about it before, we had that little bit of foot trickery on the edge of our own box, pass out, and then he's just looking at the rest of the side, and he's like, okay, bring it down. And I was like, oh, right, this square peg in this square hole, he likes to, he's not afraid to talk to the rest of his teammates. But once again, Si, last word here on Bentancur.
I think you guys covered it all. I think, I don't know how many people watched the Uruguay game the night after he was signed, but because he played 70 minutes, and you got a really good sense of, I've seen him in Juve, but it's not like he's watching like that. Particularly interested in that player. But he's so intelligent in his decisions, and he's so calm, and he's kind of like Romero in the sense that he kind of intercepts the ball, he knows where it's going, the next pass. Great passer, he's defensively solid, hard worker, leader, communicator, good technique, under pressure, maturity, 3 times champion with Juve, only 24, never injured. I'm reading through a list just to make sure I get everything. The second point I'd say is just to zoom out to the transfer window, because you can think when you hear us say all these great things, you can go, why did Juventus sell him? And we see all these great things about Kulusevski, and you go, why did they sell him? And then you also go, have this narrative around Paratici that he went back to his old club and just bought 2 players he already bought. But the truth is, because Juventus bought Vlahovic, they had to kind of move players on. And in Allegri's system, these were the 2 guys that, we were lucky enough to have as director of football who kind of had an inside track, because they were not thrown away because they're bad players. I'd say we got 2 really important squad players that could both be in the squad and can start. And we got them because another club wanted to go another direction. 2 incredible young prospects that will prosper in this system and under this coach. We're lucky.
So last time you were on, we were talking about feeder clubs and Standard Liège being a potential feeder club for us. I didn't realise at that point that it could be Juve who were our European feeder club, and we were parking our young talent at before snapping them all up.
I And I mean, like, this is how it should be. Two players that Juventus, Manchester United, like fan base, are tired of, are our saviors.
That's absolutely right. You might have done us and cheated us, in my opinion, out of the Champions League in 2017. But we have now made you our feeder club, Juventus, and never like that. Very well cool. Yes, and I think we've summed up Bentancur perfectly. Bentancur, a man who can read the game as well as Morgan Freeman can read an audio book. Welcome. We should address a couple of the other issues in the transfer window that were popping up all over the place, both in our minds and on the inevitable social media. We failed to strengthen at right wing back or centre forward. We're meant to be priority positions. Gareth, I am going to spin the dial at you and ask, how much of a failure is this? Or do we just put it down to January being a difficult window to do business, as Steve Hitchens said and was slated for?
I think we all know that it's been mentioned so many times, January is a very difficult window to try and do business in. And yeah, we would all have had a look at right wing back as a priority position, and just maybe there just weren't players that were available that we thought were a good value for us at this point. I mean, I didn't hear us getting linked with many players that we didn't fail to sign. So I don't think it would have been, having got rid of or having released 4 players who didn't fit into Conte's plans, and we know that there are other members of the squad who aren't up to the standard that we need, that we bought in previous windows. There'd be nothing worse than buying someone for the sake of it who might have played well in 3 or 4 games, and then in 2 or 3 windows' time we were desperately trying to offload again to allow us to get someone else in. So I think that if Conte can do some work with Royale and Doherty and get the best out of them for the rest of the season, then that's absolutely fine not to assign the right wing back. Centre forward, that's not a particular failing of this window alone. It's been a failure of the last 7 or 8 windows that we've not been able to bring anyone in who's a foil for Harry Kane. And it does seem to be a very unique position that Spurs find themselves in, where they can't get forwards. I mean, if Milo and I had been on the scouting books at Spurs, we would have pointed out Julian Alvarez, who Manchester City have snapped up, who looks like he'd be a great signing, and he's probably exactly the right sort of agent profile, and for about 15 million quid looks like he should be great value. But yeah, we're in a position where we can't afford to get many more transfers wrong, and I think the only way that we would have got a right wing back and centre forward in this window would have been paying well over their asking price to have done it, and that may well have caused us more problems down the line. So I think we've done well over the window to get rid of the excess that we had in the squad, and so largely we've now got a squad that's full of square pegs to square holes.
Steph, can I just barge in here and push you out of the way and just take the chair for a moment and ask you a question? I was just suggesting we spent a second on some of the ones that we were linked with and have gone away, and I know it's something that has been on your mind, certainly towards the end of the window. So what do you think happened with Luis Diaz and Adama Traore? And I think particularly with Diaz, I know that you were kind of vexed by how that got out and some of the talking about it. So maybe take that as a second part of the question.
Yeah, I'll start with the second part first. I mean, first of all, I personally believe that Luis Diaz would have been an excellent signing for us. I don't think he was a priority. I don't think anyone had him on their radar. But I think when you have the opportunity to sign a player like that, especially with the qualities that Conte looks for in a forward, an attacking player, I think he would have been superb. But there is the issue of him and Sonny liking to play off the same side. I am always of the opinion that, number one, you can never have too many brilliant forwards at a football club. They will either, have to rotate and push each other, for the places, or the manager will find a way to fit them in. I think he would have been an excellent addition for us. And wow, imagine having, even if you play a 3-5-2 and one of those has to sit, imagine having that player as an option off the bench. I think, what happened with him, it seems to me that we had an opportunity to sign him. We didn't take advantage of the sliver of time we had. We possibly didn't approach the deal with quite the verve and that we should have. There are rumours that, I think it's pretty well established that we were dealing with George Mendes as a representative of Bordeaux, and we probably should have been dealing with the agent of the player himself, as well as the club directly. And somewhere in there, it's got out, and the agent, I think, have both said, okay, thanks very much for doing now work for us. We're now going to turn around to the club that have been tracking him for ages and see what they can do. And Liverpool, having tracked the player for ages, once they say yes, we're going to sign you in this window, the player's only going to go one place. I don't think we can complain about Liverpool in this at all. I think it's solely down to us.
We've had an agreement with Liverpool that they would tell them of any bids that were accepted, so I think they're obliged to do that. So I'm not sure that if we'd acted quicker that changes anything, because Porto still would have to tell Liverpool.
Yeah, it's all murky water, but as I understand it, there was a slew. And look, it's all murky water, and nobody's ever going to truly know what happened there. But it's my feeling that we could have put that deal away. Perhaps that's my wanting it to have happened. Perhaps that's my, being overcritical. Who knows?
I think we were trying to put a fast one, weren't we? Because Liverpool were intending to sign him in the summer, and I think we thought if we moved quickly, we might be able to get him now when Liverpool was sleeping. One just kind of word of caution on him. He's had an excellent season, but this is a breakthrough season. So this season he's played 18 games, scored 14 goals, and got 5 assists. The year before, it was 30 games, 6 goals, 5 assists. Before that, 29, 6 goals, 5 assists. Before that, 13, 2, 2. This is a bit of a breakout, and I do wonder...
Harry Kane had one of those runs once.
Yeah, but he's a lot older, isn't he? He's 25, so this breakthrough is happening a bit later on. I think it's interesting that you kind of mention a Spurs striker. Vincent Janssen was the one I was thinking of, signing someone off the back of a big, great season. I could well be wrong.
Answering the second part of your question, with Adama Traore, I think it's very, very clear that this is a player that was, I say clear, to me, it doesn't seem like Conte was fussed one way or another. Seems like he was a total Paratici obsession. I think Paratici really wanted him. I think when the whole you can convert him into a right wing back chitter chatter started, I didn't see it. I still don't see it. I think he's very much the player he is. I don't think he's coachable as a right wing back myself. Now watch Barcelona convert into one and win the Europa League and then win the Champions League next season. So I'm getting my dozen eggs ready to put on my face. But anyway, that's my read on it, and I think it's very simple. I think that Conte he turned around and said, look, we've only got a finite amount of cash that we can deal with and resources and so on and so forth in this window. Don't put them there, put them here. Seems very straightforward to me. And so having convinced myself, initially I wasn't excited about it, as you know. Then I sort of convinced myself he could work and started waffling on in a few pods ago about, well, if you're having him could attack the 10 yards in a deep sitting defence, you could get in there and gone around in circles. And now I'm going to go back to my original position, which is COVID and not being there. So it's all good, no problem there.
Your last point, Stefan, really connects to the question, which is our failings. I think one thing that is so easy to forget in the hype is that we always working with second-hand information, which is to say we don't know what the day-to-day conversations are between Paratici and Conte. So stuff that the journalist picks up as a need